It is Tuesday, May 12th. This is the Christian Commute. I am your host, Seth. You're riding home with me. I have a quarter tank of gas. We're going to see if that's enough to get me there. I'm driving my little tiny Kia car because gas is still $4 a gallon. And I have to go to the ballpark tonight. And I think somebody painted those parking lot lines in 1972. Or maybe the 50s. I don't know. That ballpark's been there a long time. And it's for tiny little cars. Not that they had small cars in 1970. I tell you what it's not for. The giant F-150 that every baseball coach and baseball dad has. And the giant Tahoe and Suburban that every one of our wives has. So I'm going to drive my little crappy Kia Soul there is what I'm going to do. This could be the last night at the baseball park. My eldest son, his team is in the losers bracket. They lost a close one last night. And that I could be done with baseball for the year. We'll see. Could be my son's last Little League game. He's 12. But I'm heading home before I go there. Home in the little car that I drove to Dalton today. And you may be wondering, Seth, I know it's Tuesday. I know it's the day you go to work. But where were you last Tuesday and where were you last Friday? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Friday, I took the day off. I had some stuff to take care of at home, and I just took the day off. I had some stuff to fix, and I took the day off, and I did that. Tuesday, I went to a therapist appointment. My therapist texted me and said, could you move our appointment from this day to this day? And I said, okay, whatever. And I told my therapist, I said, you could have just told me that this was our appointment day, and I would have come. Because I go to the therapist, and at the end, she's like, oh, we need to schedule another day. What about this day? And I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever. Because then I have to leave and go about my life. I got to get back to work. And then I don't write it down or do anything. And a couple days before I'm supposed to be there, she texts me and says, do you want to come in person or do it over the phone? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to the therapist over the phone. I'm not going to have a remote therapist, which this is going to lead in, by the way, to today's show topic. And I'm going to do it in person. But I totally forget what day and time the appointment is until she calls me and tells me 2 days before. So I told her, I said, just next time, just don't even ask me. Just move it and call me. But anyway, that's why I didn't come to work Tuesday, because I had to go to a therapist. And I said, I'm not going to do this for an hour and then drive another hour to work. I'll just work from home. So I did not come to the office last week because of an appointment and because of PTO. I don't call it vacation. It's a vacation day. I didn't go anywhere and do anything relaxing. Did a bunch of tasks. It was a PTO day, paid time off. So that's where I was last week. Sorry. But hey, thank you to the people who, while I was gone, wrote questions. So I have 2 questions in the inbox, which means I can get through today and Friday with full shows. Today's question in the inbox is about the different kinds of offerings in the Old Testament. And today's show title is Justin Peters' Remote Elders. Is it Peters's? Justin Peters possessive. Justin Peters's Remote Elders. And as always, we have the Bible chapter review. We'll be in Luke chapter 12, verses 40. What did I write down? 41 through 44. Luke chapter 12, verses 41 through 44. We'll get to that after I plug ycrosspoint.com. What do I call it? The Y Project. ycrosspoint.com. yelevation.com, ynorthpoint.org, yrockbridge.com. You guys can donate to the Y Project through my PayPal or my Venmo, or just send me money, or do it on Patreon. You can join my one patron. Do I have one or two? I don't know. And support me that way. Help me pay for these websites, for these Ayatollah of rock and rolla, seeker-sensitive goat churches with a coffee bar and the purple haze. I said that wrong. Hold on. Ayatollah of rock and rolla, seeker-sensitive, coffee bar, goat churches in the purple haze. Led by Pastor Electric Blue. Pastor Electric Blue, I want to preach like you. How did you get so cool? Hoo baba conda. Ooh, look at you saving souls. Praise band plays rock and roll. Pastor Electric Blue. Hoo baba conda. Every kid I see walking out of Taco Bell looks like Benson Boone now. My son the other day told me he wanted a perm. I said, no! I don't know if Benson Boone has a perm. I don't think he does. But I'm just like, whatever the trend is with your mustache and your tiny shorts and men with perms, no. No. However they're dressing it. Where is it? The seeker-sensitive coffee bar goat church. These people are out there with their TED Talk sermons and their smoke machines and their LED lights and their volunteer armies, full of the type of people who like the little Jesus figurines. Guess what? I got a plastic Jesus. I guess it's rubber. These are rubber. I got a rubber Jesus in my pocket right now. I went to a barbecue restaurant and there was one sitting out and it had a little gospel tract with it. It was a little business card sized gospel tract. I picked both up and put them in my pocket. And I said, oh wait, I put the gospel tract back. Somebody might read this and get saved, but I'm keeping this rubber Jesus. This one's green. He's going in my little collection of rubber Jesuses that I take. You guys keep putting them out. I'm going to keep snatching them up. And I don't think the restaurant put it out. It's not like I talked to the restaurant about it. So people just put them in places. I want to find these people and have a theological conversation. And they're going to say, well, you're not out putting out gospel tracts. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not putting out gospel tracts with a little idol on them. I'm sure not. Right? It is possible for you to do something good and something bad at the same time. And it is possible for me to do the same. So don't forget to support the Y Project. Because there's people out there in their tight sweaters preaching up a storm of nonsense and calling it church. And they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Seth, aren't you worried about what people think? These churches are influential. Yeah, I'm worried about people think. I'm worried that people think it's a good idea to go there. But most of all, we're all going to answer to God one day, and I could tell him, maybe one day, God, I went 65 miles an hour in the left lane and slowed people down. I might have done that. I don't know. I have made my share of mistakes. I have committed my share of sins. But when this was put before me, I said, I'm going to say something about it. Like Spider-Man. In the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, starring Tobey Maguire, when he saw the Green Goblin, he says, I don't know what that thing is, but somebody's got to do something about it. So here I am, the hero of my own story, just like Spider-Man, doing something about it. Spider-Man is fighting like super soldier, serum, crazy technology, flying wing, pumpkin bomb, crazy supervillains. I made a website with several sermon reviews. Yeah, you know what? People can just disagree with me if they don't like it. At the end of the day, I'm really just happy people go to church. All right, so that's the Y Project. Is that a blurb? Whatever. get back to the general point of the show. Luke chapter 12, verses 41 through 44. Peter said, "Lord, are you addressing this parable to us or to everyone else as well?" Let's rewind a week. Remember, Jesus was telling about if you knew when the thief was coming, or if the head of the house knew when the thief was coming, he would have secured the house so it's not going to get broken into. The servants who are looking after the house better be ready when the master comes back from the wedding feast. He doesn't want to find them asleep or goofing off or whatever. All right, that's what we're talking about. Peter said, "Lord, are you addressing this parable to us or everyone else as well?" And the Lord said, "Who then is the faithful and sensible steward whom the master will put in charge of his servants to give them their rations at the proper time? Blessed is the slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions." You remember last week when I said I don't know when he's talking about the head of the house being ready for the thief, if he's talking about the guy who owns the house or if he's talking about the head servant. When you look at this context, it feels like he's talking about the head servant. But I don't know if he's moving into different households at different points. And like I said last week, I don't guess it matters. Oh, another correction from last week. I have two corrections. You guys know I listen to my own podcast, not to hear the sound of my own voice, but to make sure I didn't mess anything up. I said I have 5 exterior doors to my house. That's not true. I have 6. 4 on the back, 2 on the deck, 2 in the basement, on the back of the house. 1 in the front, 5, 1 on the side. I have 6 exterior doors. Another correction in Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, the Enterprise does not travel back in time to save the whales. The crew of the Enterprise travels back in time to save the whales on a Klingon warship, a Klingon bird of prey that they commandeered from the Klingons who were about to destroy the Enterprise, searching for Spock on the Genesis planet. Because was a captain, I don't know which, did Christopher Lloyd play that character? There was some Klingon captain who was out to get Kirk, I forget why. I want to say Kang, but I don't think that's right. I think Kang's somebody different. And Kirk tricked him. He tricked the Klingons into transporting to the Enterprise while the Enterprise crew transported to their Klingon bird of prey. And he self-destructed the Enterprise and crashed and burned on the Genesis planet. And then they took the Warbird, and that is the ship that they used to go back in time and save Earth from angry space whales. Yeah, you heard me right. That was the plot of that movie, Angry Space Whales. Here's a fun fact for you. I'm just full of them. Some of you may remember the show Seventh Heaven. The woman who played the mom on Seventh Heaven, that actress, is in Star Trek 4 as one of the heroines of the movie. She's a whale, I think she's a marine biologist. She's in Star Trek 4 as somebody from the present day. In Star Trek 1, Star Trek the Motion Picture, Stephen Collins, the dad from Seventh Heaven, he's in that one. He plays a lieutenant. And in real life, he's a creep. So there you go. Stephen Collins is his name. I forget the actress's name. The character was Annie. Annie Camden on Seventh Heaven. When I see the smiling faces smiling back at me. I think Seventh Heaven was the last family show where there was a guy singing like this on the intro. Because you had the guy from Full House. Whatever happened to predictability? Milkman, the paper boy, singing as raspy as he could. And then you had the guy from Family Matters. Do. It's a rare condition this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page. And then I think you had the same or a similar guy on Step by Step. We'll get it better the second time around. Oh, hold on. I can remember the beginning of it. Let's see. Dream was broken. Seemed like all was lost. Had to be the future. Had to pay the cost. You wonder, will there ever be second time around? That's a duet because there's a woman, and I don't know if it's Suzanne Summers or not. It goes, whoa, whoa, when the tears are over and the moment has come. You say, my Lord, I think I found someone. And they all had that raspy voice singing. Nobody talks like that. You have to sing like that on purpose. Like, you know, these fake preachers who like, oh, have a ham in a hand. I think nobody naturally says like amazing grace, sweet the sound. Nobody sings like that on purpose. And I think, even though it's a different guy, the Seventh Heaven singer was the last of the raspy voice, family sitcom drama theme song guys. There you go. And I mean, anything to do. Am I done with the Bible chapter review? Where did I rabbit trail off on that? I didn't even get past the first verse. Why was I talking about that? All right, Peter said, Lord, who are you addressing this parable to? Is it us or to everyone else? And the Lord said, who is the faithful and sensible steward whom the master will put in charge of his servants to give them their rations at the proper time? Blessed is the slave whose master finds so doing. When he comes, truly I say to you, he will be put in charge of all his possessions. Oh, I was on corrections. That's what happened. That's how that rabbit trail goes. Anyway, this is not a fun fact. This is a point of apologetics that you guys need to know. This verse talks about the faithful slave, right? What did this translation say? The faithful and sensible steward. Faithful slave, I think King James says faithful slave. The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society refers to itself as the faithful slave. So you hear about the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, their official name is the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, even though they were in New York, and then they sold their headquarters in Brooklyn. I don't know where they are now. But in their literature, they refer to themselves as the faithful slave. And the Watchtower itself, and remember, there's this group of people in charge of the Watchtower, they identify with the faithful slave. Like, they're the ones, remember, they say, when the Bible says this, the meek shall inherit the kingdom of the earth. They're saying everybody but the 144,000 is going to inherit the earth. And it's the faithful slave doing this inheriting when Jesus comes back. So just be ready for that cult to personally say, this is about us. And remember Peter saying, who are you talking about? You talking about us? And you got the Catholics saying, oh, we have the apostolic line from Peter. That song's about me, and he right? The rock on which I will build my church, and gates of hell not standing in it. That's Peter. He's the first pope, and we have apostolic succession. Watchtower, you're a cult too, because you're acting like this is about you, just like the Catholics act like that's about Peter. And it's just, isn't it great that Peter asked a direct question, and Jesus just answers him with another question. Who is the faithful and sensible steward who the master will find? Right? And we'll answer this as we go along in the Bible chapter review, because I cut this thing off halfway. In this part, Jesus is talking about the faithful slave and what's going to happen to him. What happens to the faithful slave when the master comes? Truly I say, he will be put in charge of all his possessions. He's shown himself faithful. I think elsewhere Luke says, if you're faithful with small, you'll be faithful with much. If you're not faithful with little, you can't be faithful with a lot. I think that's where they, what is Spider-Man? Another Spider-Man reference, with great power comes great responsibility. Is that from Uncle Ben, or is that Jesus? Or is it both? Is it both? But we're not. I don't think we're there yet. But the same thing Jesus is saying here. Like, okay, if the slave is faithful when the master comes, he's shown himself approved, and he's going to be put in charge of more. And we're going to get, by the way, I guess Friday, Lord willing, we're going to talk about what happens to the unfaithful slave. And then we'll get the denouement, if you will, of this parable, the explanation. But for now, let's move on. Let's move on to the question in the inbox. This is from Calvin in South Dakota. Calvin in South Dakota. One of the few states to which I've never been. South Dakota. Maybe one day I'll go there and go grouse hunting. I've eaten a grouse from South Dakota, but I myself have not been. And Calvin asks, what is the difference between the various types of offerings in the Old Testament? Sin offerings, burnt offerings, guilt offerings. He mentions those, but you could also mention free will offerings, wave offerings. There are different offerings in the Old Testament, and he's saying, what's the deal with these? What's the difference? Why do you have more than one? What do they entail? Okay. So first of all, let's look at this from a New Testament Christian perspective. The only perspective you should look at it from is Jesus fulfills all of these. Because here's the thing from an apologetic standpoint. If you're a Christian and you go out and you say, Jesus died on the cross for our sins. Well, why do you have to do that? They say. They. Maybe they is the skeptic. Why do you have to die on the cross for our sins? Well, the sin debt must be paid. God is just. People can't just get away with something. Somebody's got to pay for these sins. Atonement must be made. And we see Christ prefigured because they had a day of atonement in the Old Testament, Yom Kippur. So there has to be atonement for the people. And it's got to be blood. It's got to be blood that pays the atonement. So Jesus bled and died on the cross for our sins. So that was the sacrifice. He died for our sins, and now we can be reconciled to God. And here's what happened. The skeptic says, well, hold on a minute. What kind of sacrifice with Jesus? Because there's like 10 million different kinds. There's not 10 million. I think there's like 6. Okay, there's like 6 in the Old Testament. Which kind was he? Because if he's not a burnt offering, then burn him up. So let's go through these. And you probably find a lot of these in regulations on what you're supposed to do in Leviticus. So you'd have a burnt offering. Okay, and a burnt offering is something that's going to be done at a time like one of the festivals. But you could do one anytime if you just wanted to give one. But there's going to be specified times and occasions for the burnt offering. What's the burnt offering for? Well, it's for atonement. And here's the thing about a burnt offering. It's burned up. It's all gone. So it is a total dedication of something to the Lord. There's no portion held back for anybody. The burnt offering is completely destroyed in the fire, and it's dedicated unto the Lord. And when you're talking about what differentiates it from other types of offerings, timing, as it's going to be related to feast days. So timing is an important part of this. Totality is another part of this. Now the other offerings are burnt offerings too. So a burnt offering is not necessarily a sin or guilt offering, but sin and guilt offerings are burnt offerings, but they can be partial. So you think about if you've sinned and you go to the temple to make your offering, you don't burn the whole animal up. The priest gets his cut. And that's the priest's livelihood. That's how he survives, is on his cut of the burnt offering. So the part you're giving is burnt up, but the priest gets some. So it's not totally burnt up. But you have sin offerings and guilt offerings. Well, hold on. If you sin, aren't you guilty? Hey, they got to have a different name. So remember, in the Old Testament, you have the ceremonial law, right? And you could become ceremonially unclean, and you could have done this without any kind of malice. You just maybe accidentally didn't follow the rules, didn't pay attention good enough, all right? You failed in some way to follow the ceremonial law, so you want to pay for your sin with a sin offering. And yes, some of it was burned up. Now, what about a guilt offering? A guilt offering carries restitution with it. So in a sin offering, you're just making something up to God. But a guilt offering, there's an idea of restitution, like you did something and there could have been malice involved. You could have hurt your neighbor in whatever you did that was wrong. So now you have to make recompense not only to God, but to your neighbor. So there's a little something extra in that when you're talking about a guilt offering. But you also see you have atonement for sin in both. Then you have a free will offering. What is that? You're not obligated because it's festival time. You're not obligated because you did anything wrong. You're not obligated because you're ceremonial unclean. You're not obligated because you sin. You just love the Lord and you want to worship Him by making an offering. It's a free will offering because you weren't really obligated to do it. You just want to. And this is probably closer to our offerings of money in the New Testament. In modern times, we give money. Like, we're not donating chickens and grain, sheaves of barley to the church. I'm sure that was done at some time. Back then they had their first fruits, right? It was literally the first of their produce. Okay, we do that. We get money, right? They're going to pay me X thousand dollars at work, and I'm going to give some over to church, whether I sin this week or not, because my sins have already been paid for by Jesus on the cross. So we give as cheerful givers. So if there's any one of those still going on, it's that one. So those are the different types of offerings. And when you look at the differences, they have to do with timing, obligation, and severity of the offense. Or I might not say severity of the offense. That's probably the wrong thing to say. More like intent. Like if you went to jail now for killing somebody, manslaughter is not as bad as murder, right? First, second degree murder. It's sort of like that. What's the intent? So those are the various reasons, and they're all regulated under the Levitical law, and they're all fulfilled in Christ. Because these things point to Christ. Doesn't mean He has to be burnt up. Literally. Well, they didn't burn Him. He was crucified. That's not on the list. That's because they point to Him. Okay? Guys, you ever watch a movie and you're like, oh, this is a biblical parallel? I saw the movie Greenland the other day, and it's a movie about an asteroid. It's going to destroy the Earth, and Gerard Butler has to get his family to an army bunker in Greenland to survive it. And then there's a sequel called Greenland Migration, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, Gerard Butler is a Moses figure in this movie. And then I thought back, oh, he's a Noah figure in the first one. All right? They're not saying it. It just alludes to it. So when you look, it's literally in the Bible in the Hebrews about the Old Testament law being a shadow. And we've gone from shadow to substance, all right? These things are foreshadowing Jesus. They're pointing to Him. So there's your answer. And I mean, maybe you're just asking that from a standpoint of just general knowledge. Because we don't really study this a lot, and so you're not studying this in 8-year-old Sunday school. Ask any Baptist 8-year-old about Moses and Noah and Abraham, and they will tell you everything about them. Ask them about a wave offering and a guilt offering. About what? So you come across those in the Bible, and you're like, what in the world? So maybe this question, I don't know Calvin's intent, maybe this question is just general biblical understanding. But since the show was supposed to be about apologetics, because I have a master's in that, I always like to say, you're going to have to answer this. This is what the skeptic might say, and this is how you respond. Because skeptics are going to be like, oh, listen, they're doing all these different type of offerings, and which one is Jesus supposed to be, and how is it different from all the pagan cultures around it, because they're all doing those kind of offerings, blah, 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 blah. And know these things and be ready to give it a fit. So thank you, Calvin, for that question. It's a good question. Good question that refers going to the Bible to look at these things. You got to go to Leviticus, Bob Dylan's favorite book of the Bible. When Bob Dylan got saved and was doing his old gospel music thing, they said, "What's your favorite book of the Bible?" He goes, "Leviticus." I think he was messing with them. All right. It's all inspired scripture, but nobody says Leviticus. All right, let's go to today's show title, Justin Peters' Remote Elders. Justin Peters lives in Montana, for those of you who don't know, outside of Billings. And the news has come on the interwebs. There's a website. Justin Peters is, I don't know if he's starting a church, if there's a group of people starting a church. There's a church that's going to be called Grace and Truth Church. And you know it's Calvinistic because it has grace in the name. Grace and Truth Church. For me, I was like, why don't you, I'm more of the type of Baptist who says you should name a church after where it is. And I go to Redeeming Grace Baptist Church. I think we should be Highway 61 Reformed Baptist Church. So you know you go to one of these Calvinistic churches because they have to put grace in the name. They got to put grace or covenant or something like that. But Justin started this church. It is a storefront church. It's being run out of a furniture store or floor covering store. I guess it's fair to call it an interior store. It's the kind of store where you take your wife and they have all the floor samples and counter samples and say, we'll do this to your house. So it's not being run out of a traditional church building. Who cares? Somebody might call it a gas station church. Okay. I wouldn't venture that far yet because, Justin Peters did go to seminary. I think he has been a pastor at another church before. Well, I don't think it's just some dude by himself starting a business. But it has all the other markings of a gas station church, except this new one. It has remote elders. And this is why we're doing this. If somebody had said Justin Peters is starting a church, I'd be like, all right, then, that's nice. And there's a Seth that's really small. I'm like, of course it is. Church Calvin, I wouldn't call it Reformed. I don't think it's like I don't think they hold to the Reformed confession like the LBC. They have a confession on the website. It's a Baptist church, and I'd say it's a predestinarian Baptist church. It's more like, I would say it's more like there's this little sort of a category of independent fundamental Baptist churches that also believe in predestination. And you probably say the archetype for that is Grace Community Church in LA, which was MacArthur's church. So I read their website. It's premillennial, dispensational, church is different from Israel, pre-trib rapture. They put a pre-trib rapture in the confession of faith. And they put in the confession of faith 6 24 hours days. A lot of churches won't put that. They'll believe it, but they won't put that in there. So it seems to be of a certain type of church, whatever, fine. But it's good to be specific, by the way, in your confession of faith. But it's clearly a church that's for people or geared towards people who come from the Reformed world, the type of people who would buy tickets to Shepherd's Conference and G3 if G3 still sold tickets. Okay? The type of people would go to a Ligonier conference, have an R.C. Sproul book, have a MacArthur book, listen to his stuff. And by the way, that type of church, especially in a small town out west, any small town, really, is going to be small. Number one, if it's in a small town, and number two, because most people don't believe that specifically. So church plants by their nature begin small, and any church really with very specific doctrinal convictions, especially if they're Calvinistic, is going to be small. So it's small, right? And they only have one elder, and it's Justin Peters, and he's the elder / senior pastor, which I mean, you can see Justin Peters on YouTube saying elder and pastor are the same thing and they're all equal. He's right about that. So I don't know why he's on the website calling himself the senior pastor and the elder if he's acknowledged in the past, rightfully so, that all elders are equal and have equal authority. But that's not to be nitpicky. But I'm going to be picky. This is not nitpicky. On the website it says, we believe a church should have a plurality of elders, which I think is right. That's optimal. And let me say this by way of, what do you call this? Disclosure, full disclosure. We don't have a plurality of elders at my church, all right? Should we? Yes. Well, why don't we? Because there are I'm counting the pastor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 men at my church. That's how small it is. Yes, we all have wives and everybody's married, all right? Not everybody has kids, but everybody has wives. We have wives and kids in general. And then there's ladies. I think there's 2 single ladies who are members. So there's 9 giving units at my church in membership. 9. 7 men. 2 of them are deacons. Okay, and there's people who may be disqualified for whatever reason, through divorce or the status of their household, whatever. It's a very small population. So it's like, well, you guys should have multiple elders. Do I need more than one shepherd to look after 9 sheep or 9 families worth of sheep? I think the answer to that is no, right? Also, we're a congregational church because we're Baptists, true Baptists. We're congregational, and all 9 of us are voting on things. Like I said, it's more like 20 members because the wives are members too. So I think if you talk to anybody at our church, including our pastor, you say, should you guys have a plurality of elders? Like, yes, we'd like to. But we got 7 guys. Let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 7 guys. One's the pastor, that leaves 6. So and then you got 2 of them are deacons. So out of these 4 guys, if we want to have a plurality of elders, we really need to have 2 more, because you don't want 2, because what if they disagree? You need a tiebreaker vote, right? The plurality is really 3 at least. And then it would be like, it'd be kind of ridiculous. We got 3 elders, 2 deacons, and 2 pew sitters. What? So it'd be kind of absurd for a small church to have more than 1 elder. So I think there's an idea like you grow and have this plurality of elders that you're appointing. We're not there yet. Lord willing, we'll get there. So there's my full disclosure about that. So even on the website of Justin Peters' church, he's like, we're supposed to have a plurality of elders, but we're just starting, so we don't. So this is his solution to that. He says temporarily, this is supposed to be temporary, just like village churches' campuses are supposed to be temporary. He has what they're calling remote elders. So there's 7 other guys who are remote elders listed on the church website. And for all I know, they have more elders than members. I don't know, maybe there's 7 people in the carpet store. I don't know. And all of these guys are elders at other churches. Phil Johnson is on there. There's another guy from Grace Community Church on there. I think Mike Riccardi's from there. Jim Osman is on there, who was Justin Peters' pastor at another church. There's a guy on there. He's from American Samoa. He's a pastor in American Samoa. Like, what time zone is that dude on? Like, you really went remote. You got a guy out in the middle of the ocean. He will never go there. But, and this is for accountability. I asked Justin about this. Hold on. Because I told him I was going to do a little comparison of this. So I asked him about it. Let me find what he told me. So this is sort of their statement. I want to give them their fair shake. Because, by the way, I think this is patently unbiblical. Here's what they're saying. They have some points. All these remote elders are in fact actual elders in actual churches with other actual elders. Our lives and our doctrine are under the scrutiny and accountability of the local elders we are serving with at our home churches. None of us are independent. Now let me break this down. You notice what the scrutiny is. The scrutiny and accountability of the other local elders. So they are not, in their language, accountable to the members of their individual churches. Only the other elders of their local churches. Well, what makes these guys elders? Legit elders. Well, who says they're elders? Well, the church does, right? Who's the church? It's the people. So one of the things I always warn you guys against, this is one of the big reasons I warn you against Jeff Durbin and all these other gas station churches out there. It's that people just say they're elders and make churches and then legitimize themselves by saying, well, all these other elders say that we're cool. Who decided that they were the elders? Well, we did. All the elders decided that they were the elders. And what really stuck out to me when Justin Peters did this, I guess what you could say bothered me, is he is one of the most vociferous and perhaps best critics of Stephen Furtick and his ilk. And I know you can't compare his little confessional church out of the carpet store to Stephen Furtick's megachurch or Perry Noble's megachurch. But remember, they were tiny little church plants operating at the gas station level one day before they got big. And what happened, Mark Driscoll, what happened with these entrepreneurial churches? Well, if you say, well, who's the leadership team at Elevation? They got a website and it's full of pastors who are pastors at other churches. Like Perry Noble used to be one of them. And Perry Noble, he had the same thing, like, this is the accountability team. It's not voting pew sitters here who are members of this church. It's this outside board of guys. And it's like, yeah, but they're all your friends. Number one, they're all mega pastors who are super busy. They don't have time to keep an eye on you. So they're already supposedly overseers at their own local church. You have to spend their time overseeing their local church. And now you're saying they're also overseeing you. Well, is that an apostolic relationship? Well, it can't be because they're not apostles. Is that a pastoral relationship? Or it can't be because they're not your pastor. Because how can they be your pastor if they're not a member of your church? Because a pastor is a local office. It's sort of like saying this. Who's my president? Donald Trump. Who's my governor? Brian Kemp. Okay. Well, who put, and Justin Peters would say democracy is good for a government, but not good for a church. He doesn't believe in congregationalism. But Donald Trump is accountable to the voters and accountable in our system of government to the legislative branch and the judicial branch with checks and balances, right? But he's not accountable to whoever the Prime Minister of England or France is, or Brazil or Mexico, right? What if Brian Kemp told all you Georgians who listen, like, hey, don't worry, the governors from Tennessee and Alabama and American Samoa are keeping me accountable. You'd be like, well, no. You're our governor, okay? So this idea of outside eldership in a Baptist or independent church sense, I'm not talking about, say, the Pope being over somebody, like an ecclesiastical bishopric model. I'm talking about this idea that we're starting churches, or I'm starting a church and I'm the elder, and my evangelical celebrity friends are the guys who are over me. And if you look at it, these remote elders are Justin Peters' evangelical celebrity friends. Now, they're minor celebrities because confessional Calvinistic churches are smaller. But if you're the kind of person who reads Pulpit and Pen or goes and would buy G3 tickets, you know who these people are. You've heard of them. And you know all those are Justin Peters' friends. So what I don't like is that they're parroting this remote eldership idea that was pioneered by charlatans and phonies and entrepreneur gas station people like Stephen Furtick. Now, yeah, Stephen Furtick started a gas station church, and now his gas station is a Buc-ee's, right? Still. So, 2, this is their second point. The nature of our serving remotely is temporary by design. Good. In no way are we stating this is the best way to structure a church's government. Agree. But it beats the alternative of a solo pastor who operates without scrutiny or accountability. You know what they're saying? That the congregation of a church, that the members don't have any right or place to scrutinize or hold their pastor accountable. They're lower beings, if you will. So, throw out priesthood of all believers from Baptist world. The pew sitters, we're not worthy, they have no business keeping a single pastor accountable. Only other elders from other churches can do that. But then you get into this sort of infinite regression of who says they're elders, or who said they were elders, or who said they were elders. And you have to go back and do like this apostolic succession thing. So, what are the rights, what are the voting membership rights of the members of this church, if any? Because what this sounds like to me is Justin Peters preaching in a carpet store and saying, I'm your pastor, but don't worry, I'm being kept accountability by these 7 guys on a website who already have full-time jobs. All right. Go to number 3. We acknowledge the inability to shepherd remotely. Good. According to 1 Peter 5, 1 through 3. However, we are fulfilling those requirements with the flocks which are among us at our home churches. So all they're saying in number 3 is, although we're saying we're shepherds of this church, because remember in Baptist world, shepherd, elder, and pastor mean the same thing, and Justin Peters himself will tell you that. It's on video. This is not the idea that some people have of, well, elders and pastors are different. Nope. You can hear Justin Peters in his own words say a pastor and an elder are the same thing. It's all over YouTube. So they're saying, well, we can't really remotely shepherd anybody. But we're shepherding the flocks of our local churches. Well, yeah, of course you are. But what does one thing have to do with the other? That's like them saying, I can't be the quarterback, or how about a coach? I can't be the coach of the University of Montana because I'm a coach at University of Alabama, Birmingham. But don't worry, I'm still a coach, and I'm here in Birmingham coaching my Blazers. And the Montana Grizzlies, I can't shepherd them. I can't coach them. You're right, you can't, and you're not. Nobody's saying these guys aren't elders of some church, because the website I'm an elder at this church over here. So I can't remotely elder these people. So they're basically saying we're not really elders of this church because we can't shepherd them, but we're elders. Well, nobody said you weren't. So that's really nonsensical. Our scrutiny of what is taught at Grace and Truth Community Church will be without bias and accountability and will be actual. I will be reviewing each message personally. So that's one for the elders who says, I'm going to listen to all Justin's sermons and I'm going to keep him accountable. Again, it's saying, hey, stupid pew sitter, it's beyond you to listen for an error in Justin Peters' sermon. But don't worry, this guy over here, who these other people at this other site who say their elders over here, who says he's an elder, and their elders because he says they are, and they have this church over here, they're going to listen to all his sermons and make sure they're okay. So I want you to think about this. Now you have an elder for another church who's saying, it is now my shepherding responsibility to listen to a sermon from another church and keep that pastor accountable. Aren't you supposed to be overseeing your own people? And the sermons where you are, where are you finding the time for this? And it's going to be without bias. That's literally impossible. In the Little League, here in Cartersville, where I'm about to go, I'm about to pick up my son and head out the door and get him to the batting cages. We're always short of umpires. So we have to call in teenage kids to do it. And it is a rule. If your little brother is playing in that game, you can't call the balls and strikes behind home plate. Same thing with soccer. If you're a teenage soccer or a dad, a grown-up soccer referee, you can't referee your own kid's game. Why? Because you won't be biased. Well, no, I'm going to call it straight up and down the middle. Yeah, but somebody will always say you're biased. You're inherently biased towards your friends. So appointing a bunch of your friends to keep you honest and saying, well, we're not going to be biased, you are holding yourself and a church to a lower standard than the Little League baseball. Give me a break, guys. All right, this is from this is what one of the remote elders said, and one of the other guys is like, I totally approve this. Hold on, I got to pull in my driveway and not run over a soccer ball. I love Jesus more than Justin, I don't doubt it, and thus my loyalties flow upward. I know this is easy to say, but needs to be stated. Men who have demonstrated self-will in life and doctrine at home are disqualified from helping any church in any location. Yes, your loyalty is upward, but don't forget about your outward responsibilities. I have no doubt that you love Jesus more than Justin. And that's what differentiates you from the type of people who would be one of Stephen Furtick's elders, that they're crooked people who I wouldn't pee on if they were on fire, and I wouldn't trust them to feed my dog if I went on vacation. These are people who they're horrible. Okay. So yes, I get that. You're not like the same horrible people. You're just in the same model that the horrible people invented. Last but not least, the New Testament demonstrates that men traveling were used of God to help establish churches. I'm very careful here not to appear to equate us with the apostolic model, but I can see the principle at work nonetheless. That's almost the same thing that one of the elders from Rockbridge told me when I challenged his multi-campus model and having campus pastors. These people have gone from having remote campuses to having a campus with remote elders. So you would ask these guys, should you have remote campuses? No, that's not biblical. Well, they've just flipped it around. We've got remote elders. So as much as I want this little town in Montana to have a solid preaching, and Justin Peters' preaching will be just fine. I was about to say I've never heard anything he said that I disagree with theologically, but his ecclesiology is a lot different than mine. His preaching will be fine. And it'll probably be a doctrinally healthy church, except for this monster ecclesiology they've come up with. It's crazy, backwards. So I want any little town, any town USA, to be able to have a church like this. But guys, can we not just say we'll get more elders as we grow, and we're not going to have remote elders? Because if we think about this at a New Testament perspective, there's just no way that guys who are elders at a church, think about the distance from Samoa to Montana. I know we have the internet now on planes, but like the feasibility of keeping somebody accountable while you are the overseer of your own flock and your own family at home is just crazy. When I read this website, I see 7 guys who are Justin Peters' friend who have sort of pull and minor celebrity in a certain segment of evangelicalism. And that's like street cred. Like, look at my guys. Like, you don't think Perry Noble and Stephen Furtick give cred to their terrible people? Just like good people give credit to other good people. But that's what I see here. I think it's just tragic and nonsensical, but here it gets down to the idea that we're elders and you pew-sitter church members don't have any votes over us. So I want you to look at the alternative. They've said, we know this is not the biblical model, and because of it's not the biblical model, it's temporary, and we can't even really shepherd them. Basically what we're doing is we're going to listen to Justin's sermons and tell him if he's erred. Guys, did you really have to put that on a website? If you're his friends, just say, Justin, I know you don't have any other elders there. What we're going to do for you, buddy, is we're going to listen to your sermons and keep you accountable. And you can write some reports to us, send us some emails. We're going to visit every once in a while, and we're just going to help you as friends. Guys, a few months ago, I had some issue. It was like a church-related, theological-related issue. You know what I did? I just texted Jordan Hall, disqualified Jordan Hall. And I said, hey, man, what about this? I want you to call me and give me advice. And he called me, and I talked to him an hour, and his advice was fantastic. He didn't have any authority to say that. He's just somebody I knew would have wisdom on it. Okay? We all have those people in our lives, and Justin does too, and that's good for him. But when he puts them on a website, and they allow themselves to be put on a website as remote elders, it is really an offense, if you will, or a diminishing of the office of elder. It just makes them look bad. It makes their local church look bad. It makes our little section of evangelicalism look bad. We look like Stephen Furtick's crew. It's stupid. It's just stupid. And what bothers me is you see, like, nobody's perfect. Be like, I share Justin Peters stuff all the time. And it's like, oh man, that's bad. That's really bad. So I may actually blog about this if I find the time, maybe in the summer, to kind of break this down. Because what I don't want is to grant legitimacy to the multi-campus people, to the apostolic people, because that's what Robert Morris would be, like the apostle of somebody who's planning a church. And Mark Driscoll would do that. It's just like, guys, do you think you're going to take... And that's what it gets down to the end. It's like, well, we don't want to equate with the apostolic model. This is temporary. It's not best, but it's better than just having a pastor accountable to local church members. That's what they're saying. Your celebrity internet friends, minor celebrity, because remember, you don't grow churches by preaching biblical predestinationism. God does, though. Your minor celebrity friends who can't really shepherd anybody listening to your sermons is better than butts in the seats, actual flesh and blood regenerate Christians keeping you accountable. These people have no right to replace you as pastor. Only the outside people can. Guys, it's a problem. Thanks for listening to Christian Commute. Lord willing, I'll be back with you again Friday. Lord willing, they'll stop this mess in Montana. As always, God bless. And as always, remember, Christianity is not about getting saved. It's about being saved.